Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Today, inshallah, we will talk about literary trends at the end of the 19th century. If you remember, at the beginning of the 19th century, there was the Romanticism. There were many changes actually happening during the 19th century. And now we will just focus on the philosophical trends at that time, because definitely they affected the poetry, and they led to the emergence of modernism. We would not find some examples of those three trends actually, and there are more trends actually, but we will see these examples in literature of the 20th century, okay? Not the whole poem being under naturalism or new romanticism or aestheticism, no, but parts of those actually poems will reflect the features of each of one or two of these actually trends, okay? Fine. So let's come to the first trend, which is naturalism, okay? Naturalism. So we can ask this question: what do you mean by naturalism, and what does it focus on? Now, before I start with naturalism, I would like to remind you that there was another philosophical trend at that time before naturalism, which is called realism. It is called realism, okay? After that, they named it naturalism. Some people, they consider them both the same. Others, no, they give them different title because there are slight differences between them, okay? So when we talk about realism, okay, before naturalism, what do you mean by that? Now, the idea of realism is that you shouldn't, they tell the poets, the writers, you shouldn't filter or fantasy their fictional world, and instead they have to base their ideas on real everyday life, okay? So all the works are about the life, and they are reflective of life without any fantasy, without any filtering, without any feelings. So that was the realistic. Now, so rather than, for example, fun metaphors or imagery, a realistic writer would show you the undramatized life and dialect of the area. So why to make metaphors and to have imagery and trying to beautify the view? No. That's the real picture of the life, okay? Now, naturalism came after or based on realism, and it is reflective of realism. But here, when we talk about naturalism also, it is the belief that nothing exists beyond the natural world. Okay? Instead of using supernatural or spiritual explanations, this is similar to the realism, naturalism focuses on explanations that come from the laws of nature. Nothing can be explained except according to the laws of nature. Naturalism refers to a realistic approach to art that rejects idealized experiences. If there is an experience, show the experience without trying to beautify it, or without trying to add metaphors and imagery to make it appealing for the reader. So when you look at a painting that embodies the spirit of naturalism, you'll notice it capturing the real world rather than trying to make things look better than they are. With naturalism, what you see is what you get, okay? So if you look at a picture from a naturalistic point of view or realistic point of view, what is in the view will be painted in the picture, nothing else. لا حنضيف شوية إضاءات ولا حنضيف نجوم ولا حنضيف أشياء مش موجودة عشان نجمل المنظر, okay? So that's naturalism. Now, naturalism attempts to apply scientific principles of objectivity and detachment to its study of human beings. تذكر الرينيسانس They were focusing on scientific ideas in understanding everything. Now, Romanticism tried to focus on feelings. After Romanticism, some people rejected the ideas of those romantic people, and they took us back to the scientific principles of objectivity. So we are swinging between feelings and mind, okay? Fine. So naturalism attempts to apply scientific principles of objectivity and detachment to its study of human beings, while Romanticism the emphasis is on individual freedom from social conventions or political restraints. The emphasis is on human imagination and on nature in a typically idealized form, okay, idealized form. While for naturalism, it's like a controlling force, okay, the nature. Here, it is idealized and romantic. So this is the difference between naturalism and romanticism. Naturalism is objective, romanticism is subjective. This one is objective because it focuses on the scientific explanation of everything, while Romanticism is subjective because it focuses on the individual understanding of the world, the individual feelings, how they see the world or the experience. Now let's come to characteristics of naturalism. So definitely for each philosophical trend, there is a number of qualities or traits that would differentiate it from the other trends. Let's come first to characteristics of naturalism. The first one is determinism. Determinism اللي هي يعني here we will talk about determinism or free will. Is your life predetermined? What is going to happen with you is predetermined, or you get what you do by your free will, okay? So, for example, your name. Is it your free will to choose your name, or it is predetermined? Of course, predetermined. Where you will be born, where you will live, who you will get married to, what you will work in your life, what you will do in your life, where you will travel, okay? Where you will die. All these things, are they because of determinism or your free will? Okay, so for naturalism, they thought that determinism is the thing that controls our life. It is the thing that controls our life. يعني في عنا بالعلوم الإسلامية هل الإنسان مسير أم مخير؟ مسير يعني things are determined for you. مخير, it means that what you choose leads your life. Now human beings are living in a natural environment like animals. They can react toward the exterior and interior forces, but they are helpless before these forces. يعني yes, you live in that environment, and you interact with the environment, but you are unable to change anything. What is meant for you to get, you will get, okay? Often, a naturalist author will lead the reader to believe that a character's fate has been predetermined, usually by heredity, قوانين الوراثة, and environmental factors, that the destiny of humanity is misery in life and oblivion in death, and that he or she can do nothing about it. So the idea of the naturalist author, okay, for example, in a novel or dramatic poetry, they would write something which shows you that what happened for this person was meant to happen for him. It was predetermined for this person. It could be because, for example, the beauty of the girl is because of her, for example, the heredity laws from her, or yeah, by heredity from her parents could be, okay? Sometimes the successful person, he's successful because of the environmental factors, because he has a rich family, for example, or he has supportive people around him, while a one who is who becomes a criminal, for example, he would become a criminal because of his also environment, or because of his circumstances. So whether this or that, it's not your choice to decide who would be, if you would be successful or unsuccessful, if you would be beautiful or ugly, if you would be, for example, someone important or unimportant in society. All these things are decided for you. So this is the idea of determinism. Our life is predetermined for us, and we don't have a free will to change it or to change the circumstances around us. Okay. Now, objectivism, from the beginning, we said that with naturalism, there is a focus on the scientific explanation or understanding. There is nothing spiritual or supernatural to explain things. That's why in your writing, if you want to write a novel, you want to write a poem, you shouldn't use those supernatural elements or spiritual elements in order to make your work more beautiful. No, you have to be objective. So the author presents himself or herself as an objective observer, similar to a scientist taking note of what he or she sees. Okay, so if you want to write about suppose the problems that people face in our society, okay? Just write the facts, the information, the facts. Don't interfere on those facts. Yani, don't say the poor people, the miserable people, the situation is tragic. So these words actually show your opinion. So you shouldn't. You should say that, for example, the people in our country earns less than 500 shekels per month, for example, and this is much less than the poverty line that the government has decided on, which means that people are, you don't say miserable or horrible situation, are considered poor according to the criteria or the considerations of the government. So this is how you speak. You are objective. You are only an observer. Okay? Of course, no human being can ever be truly objective, okay, when you are a writer, of course, but by detaching the narrator from the story he or she tells, an author can achieve objectivity. يعني الفكرة انه الكاتب ما يعتبرش نفسه الراوي في القصيدة او في الرواية اللي هو بكتبها، لا، يخلق شخصية راوي، وشخصية الراوي هي اللي تحدثنا بهذه بالأحداث. Okay? In this way he will actually gain some objectivity. This is how they can be objective. But if you are a character in the middle, first in the middle of the actions, and you speak about, then maybe you will be subjective, because you will see from the point of your view, not the others. Okay. Now the third characteristic of naturalism is pessimism. Okay. So definitely, because we are focusing on, we are just focusing on the scientific elements and aspects of our life, and we see that this life is full of difficulties, full of hardship. Definitely we will be pessimistic. So naturalistic works have lines or phrases that tend to carry a pessimistic connotation, sometimes emphasizing the inevitability of death. يعني حتمية الموت المكتوبة على الناس أحيانا الشعراء بيكتبوا عنها, and it shows a pessimistic view actually, because it doesn't matter. You remember, I'll remind you of Ozymandias, Ramses II. He was powerful and he did all he could in order to establish a strong kingdom, but at the end he died and his kingdom disappeared. So that's really pessimistic and sad, as if we tell people, don't do anything in your life. At the end of the day, all of us will die. Okay, so these works exposed the dark harshness of life, including poverty, racism, prejudice, and diseases. Showed those actually miseries or hardship or difficulties that we suffer from. So definitely, with all these difficulties, you would feel pessimistic. Okay. Now we are done with naturalism. It wasn't a happy actually experience to talk about it, because at the end of the day we ended with pessimism. So now we need something to make us more optimistic about this life. Now we will come to the second trend, which is New Romanticism. New Romanticism, which started from 1890 to the start of the 20th century. So the end of the 19th century, the last 10 years, and the beginning of the 20th century. Now the new romantic, of course, from the word new, okay, new, okay, and you have romanticism. So definitely it seems that it is a revival of romanticism, because with all that focus with realism and naturalism on scientific explanation and looking at our life as not only realistic, but actually it was pale image in front of us of the world. It's either white or black. So that actually view of the world was static and doesn't reflect the real nature of our human beings, okay? So now came to the light, because when naturalism and realism came, their principles covered the romanticism. They actually mocked the romanticism, okay? So they covered them. Now other people believe in the feelings, in the subjectivity of the individual, okay? In the individual abilities and potential, if you remember the romanticism. So they decided to revive this movement. And here we have the new romantic movement. So it was an opposition to naturalism and aimed to revive the romantic spirit, love for nature. Yani nature is not just a controlling force and it could be harsh to you, okay? Love for nature. Look at the good sides of nature. Longing for old past. The old past, those actually times when we were happy, at the times of our ancestors, okay, and so on. And the use of myths and ancient stories. Why to exclude them? They are part of our history, part of our cultural character. So why not to use them and to long to those great days of human beings? So definitely you can notice the difference between naturalism and the new romanticism or the romantic spirit, okay? Now, new romanticism believed in the internal observation of the world. You meditate, you think about the world, not just in looking for reality in its superficial view. You look at, for example, the sea, and you reflect your feelings on that view. So while you are, for example, writing about it, you actually express your feelings. Suppose that the sea is rough, so it actually reflects the troubles inside you, the worry, the misery inside you. If it is quiet and peaceful and beautiful, so it would reflect the peace that you feel inside you, the love for the others and for the nature. Okay, now, so you don't look at the reality just as from its superficial view, but you go deep into the meanings and get the deep meanings that are connected with your feelings. Okay. Now, let's come to the characteristics of new romanticism. Again, I remind you, you are learning these trends in order to understand later modernism and the other actually literary works during the 20th century, because you will find like a mixture of these actually trends. So what are the characteristics of New Romanticism? Okay, the first one, the authors now focused on mood and the state of mind. خلاص خلصنا من scientific explanation of naturalism. Now back to focus on the mood and the state of mind. Okay, they distanced themselves from social problems and went back to write about the untouched nature. هذول منفصلين عن الطبيعة، هذول منفصلين عن المجتمع، عن العالم. حتى الرومانسيين، تخيل يعني إذا أنا رومانسي يعني أنسى المشاكل كلها وأنسى الحياة وأحاول إنه أنا أفصل نفسي تماما عن العالم واروح أقعد على شاطئ البحر وأوصف جمال شاطئ البحر. Okay, so you talk about the untouched nature. It became a reaction against realism and naturalism, where they wrote about the gray, problem-filled world. Okay, naturalism, realism, they focused. That's why they were pessimistic, because they focused on the miseries of the world. They focused on the hardship of poverty, of prejudice, of what else? Of disease, of famine, of starvation, all these. Okay, so the third characteristic of New Romanticism is that it was also a reaction against the new society. Alhamdulillah, there's something new. The breakthrough of the great capitalism, industrialization and development of the cities. So this is similar to the original romantic movement, okay, back in the end of the 18th century and the beginning of the 19th century, when they started to talk about the miserable situation of the children and the poor families and the outcasts. So here they started to actually react negatively. Some of them, of course, some of them went to the nature and separated themselves from the world. Other of them, they started to think about away from, actually, they wanted to get rid of this corrupted society and to criticize it. Now, the literature became more individualized and lyrical, and they wrote more about young love and infatuations. I think they were trying to find a resort for themselves from this corrupted society. Yani when you go to the nature, when you go to the love, okay, and to simple things in our human beings' nature, you actually escape from that corrupted society. Now, it was clear the use of adjectives increased to appeal to our senses, because if you remember, Romanticism, it focuses on our senses and on our feelings. Religious and mystic questions were again interesting, while with naturalism, actually most of them became atheist, because at that time the naturalistic people, they were affected by the evolution theory of Darwin. And all of them started to lose actually touch with the religion and with the God. We talked about this in Dover. Okay, yeah, we will talk about this actually. We talked it in the previous videos, but we will discuss them later. Okay, so the religious now, no, we don't want to be atheists. We don't want to lose faith in our religion, in the existence of a God. We don't want to lose faith in the hereafter life, and there is a heaven and a hell for people after that, and we will be again, we will reunite again with our beloved ones. So that was the idea of naturalism. They focused only on nature as the force, the controlling force, and they focused on the idea that there is nothing spiritual or supernatural about anything. Okay, so that's what made many people become atheists, mulhideen. Okay, so if they are taking us to the times of the paganism. What do you mean by paganism? I always keep الوثنية. I always keep forgetting the Arabic meaning. It's الوثنية. Okay, زي أيام الجاهلية عنا عصر الجاهلية. Okay, so now with the new Romanticism, religious and mystic questions were again interesting, and the belief in humans and our capability of sorting out crises was rising. So yes, you may go through a crisis, but as a human being, you are capable of supporting yourself, of pushing yourself hard to survive that crisis and learn from it. Okay, the poets wanted to describe the oblivious life of senses and the inner human being. Okay, and another point is that the new Romanticism glorified the country life and were interested in personal problems instead of political, and liked mystic dreams and longing. We talked about this point. The ninth point, the poets wrote about erotic power and its impact on our senses. This is something related to the sexual desires, and of course this is something connected with love at that time. The last point is that the women in a new Romanticism were often enigmatic, ambiguous, erotic, and unobtainable, and the woman's place was at home. Do you remember last time when we talked about the role of women in Romanticism and how they looked at the woman? I told you not to think that their image about women was an idealistic one, actually. No, it wasn't an idealistic, as we can see. Okay, now let's come to how many minutes? Yeah, okay. Let's now come to the third trend, which is called aestheticism or aesthetic movement. Aesthetic is related to beauty, okay? Beauty, النظرية الجمالية, okay? And of course, from its title, you can imagine that when you write something, you focus on the beauty of what you wrote, not the idea itself, okay? So how you use the metaphors, how you scatter the alliteration around, how you insert, for example, similes and so on in order to make the work. So you love that work not for the idea beyond the work or the moral of that work, but because of the ability of the writer to write such amazing arrangement of words, okay? Yani for example, at least for me, when we are young, we listen to the songs and we love them if they reflect what inside us. So if you are sad, you want to listen to the sad song and you feel actually connected. If you are happy, you listen to it. If you are in love, you listen to love songs and you feel connected to them. But actually when you grow up, in my age, for example, we stop to think this way, honestly. We start to listen to the songs and admire actually the music, the sound or the voice of the singer, the arrangements of the words and how they create music and the rhythm inside the song. Yeah, actually this is me now. I'm talking about myself. I stopped enjoying songs just for the purpose of the theme beyond that song, but actually for the words and for the voice of the singer and for how wonderfully are the words arranged in the lines. That's what I love a lot. So it seems that I'm one of those who believe in aestheticism, okay, at least now. So okay, let's look at aestheticism or the aesthetic movement. It's late 19th century. And it is considered part of the European arts movement, which centered on the doctrine that art exists for the sake of its beauty alone. This is actually from the French ideas that art for the sake of art. الأدب من أجل الأدب, and that it need serve no political, didactic or other purpose. مش لازم يكون في أي هدف للشعر القصيدة اللي أنت كتبتها. مش لازم يكون في أي هدف للرواية اللي أنت كتبتها أكتر من إنه لغة وجمال في ترتيب اللغة. This meant that the art of the movement was produced with a view toward being beautiful first and foremost. أهم شيء يكون شغلك حلو جدا حتى لو ما كانش فيه من وراء أي قيمة معنوية. Okay? Rather than serving a moral, a logical, doctrinal, or other such purpose. Art for art's sake. It was particularly prominent in England during the late 19th century, supported by notable writers such as Walter Pater and Oscar Wilde, and especially Oscar Wilde. Okay? Now, the aesthetic writers gave free rein to their imagination and fantasy. Okay? Free rein يعني اللجام، وكأنه لجام المخنا ملجم وقدراتنا على التفكير ملجمة، فهم they gave free rein. Okay? رخوا اللجام for imagination and fantasy. Their main purpose of their literary works was the pursuit of beauty. That's all. They wanted to create a beautiful piece of art. Okay? They didn't accept the views that literature should convey moral messages. The emphasis of the individual self in the judgment of taste can be termed as hallmarks of this movement. So definitely you decide if this work is amazing based on your taste. Okay? But your taste in the song, for example, or in the portrait or the picture or the poem or the novel, so it depends on how beautiful you see it, not what lessons you learned from it. Okay? It's not about lessons. Okay, so immense use of symbols and sensuality. Yeah, we said that. You have to be creative, talented, and amazing in your actually symbols and sensuality. Okay, oh wow, that's the end for this class. Thank you very much, and inshallah you will find it as simple as I hope it would be for you. Thank you.